picture this scenario for a second. You're driving down the highway, and that dreaded check engine light suddenly illuminates on your dashboard.
Oh, yeah. The absolute worst feeling.
Right. And if you're like most people, your immediate instinct is to just, well, pretend you didn't see it. You turn up the radio, you keep your eyes glued to the road, and you just hope the car keeps moving.
Because dealing with it feels like it's going to be this massive ordeal.
Exactly. Why do we do that? Because you assume that taking it to the mechanic means they're going to hoist it up, pull the entire engine apart on day one, and hand you a massive, incomprehensible bill.
You're terrified they'll just leave you stranded without a vehicle.
Yeah, you delay the visit because the perceived ordeal of fixing the problem feels infinitely worse than just living with the warning light.
It's a really classic avoidance mechanism, actually. The cognitive load of the unknown outcome simply overrides the reality of the present dysfunction.
We'd rather endure a familiar discomfort than face an unpredictable intervention.
Exactly. I mean, it's just human nature to avoid that kind of friction.
And that exact same psychological mechanism applies perfectly to what we are discussing today. For you listening, we are zeroing in on a warning light that so many of us ignore for years, our own mental health.
Which is such a prevalent issue.
It really is. And specifically, we're looking at the intense, almost paralyzing anxiety of seeking therapy for the very first time.
That barrier is huge for so many people.
It is. So we're going to look at a specific model of care from coping and healing counseling, often referred to as CHC. They act as this incredible case study in how modern therapy is designed to bypass those exact fears.
It's a really fascinating approach to the problem.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand the solution, we first have to rigorously define the friction. Why do we treat a first therapy session like an invasive engine overhaul?
Well, we do it because the cultural mythology surrounding therapy has done us a massive disservice. I mean, the prevailing narrative out there is that therapy is an excavation.
Like they're going to dig everything up right away.
Exactly. We build up this expectation that the moment you sit down, a stopwatch clicks, an invisible spotlight hits your face, and you're just forced to drag your deepest, darkest childhood memories out into the open.
Oh, man, yeah. I've always felt like there is this bizarre pressure to almost perform your own trauma.
Right, like you have to have it all figured out.
Yeah. You feel like you need to walk into that room with a flawlessly articulate TED Talk ready presentation of exactly what is wrong with you and, how you want to fix it.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It feels like a high-stakes job interview combined with a first date. But wait, let me push back on that a bit. Isn't therapy fundamentally supposed to be hard work?
Well, sure, eventually.
Right, so if we aren't getting into the weeds right away, isn't that just wasting time?
That's a common misconception. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the work of therapy is absolutely challenging, but the initiation of therapy is not. You really have to separate the destination from the front door.
Okay, so what does that front door actually look like?
The reality of day one, what clinicians call the intake session, is completely devoid of that cinematic intensity we just talked about.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's no homework. There's no pressure. It's essentially the equivalent of pulling the car into the bay just to plug in the diagnostic scanner. They just want to read the codes.
That is such a relieving way to frame it.
They just want to get a baseline understanding of who you are, what circumstances brought you to this moment, and, what your general hopes are. It is an orientation, not an interrogation.
Wow, so the bar is literally just on the floor.
The only metric for success on that first day is simply that you showed up.
That distinction changes the temperature of the room completely. You don't have to rebuild the transmission, you just have to hand over the keys.
Perfectly said.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of that intake session. Because one of the most fascinating outcomes of this low-pressure orientation is that people frequently report leaving that very first session feeling noticeably lighter.
It's a very common phenomenon.
And the information we are examining in this deep dive explicitly clarifies that this lightness isn't because anything has been miraculously fixed. The stressors haven't vanished. The difficult boss is still there.
The grief is still there.
Exactly. The terrain hasn't changed at all.
But the way the brain is processing that terrain has shifted fundamentally.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The lightness happens simply because you finally said the thing out loud to, quote, someone trained to actually hear it.
That phrasing is so important.
I want to pause and really put that phrase under the microscope, Because a lot of people might argue, well, I can just talk to my best friend over a beer or, vent to my partner. Why do I need a professional?
It's a totally fair question.
How does speaking to a trained therapist mathematically change the equation of a conversation?
This raises a really important point about the hidden architecture of our everyday conversations. When you vent to a friend, you're operating within a reciprocal social contract.
Meaning there are unspoken rules?
Exactly. Even subconsciously, your brain is doing constant math. You're monitoring their facial expressions. Are you burdening them? Are they judging you?
Are they going to remember this the next time they see you at a party?
Right. Or, perhaps most commonly, are they going to instantly offer you well-meaning but totally unhelpful advice just to make their own discomfort go away?
Oh, the premature problem solvers.
Yes, exactly those people.
We all have that friend who won't just let you be sad. They instantly start giving you a 5-point action plan because your negative emotion is making them anxious.
Right. And your brain recognizes that social friction, so it keeps its defensive shields raised. You inevitably edit yourself.
You hold back the really dark stuff.
Exactly. But a trained professional provides completely neutral geometry. They sit entirely outside your social ecosystem.
So they aren't going to bump into you at the grocery store and make it weird.
Right. They have no vested interest in the outcome of your weekend plans or your argument with your sibling. When we say they are trained to hear it, we mean they are trained in active, non-judgmental validation.
They act as a clear mirror.
Yes, which allows your brain to finally bypass its own defensive filters. The profound relief of that first session comes from the sudden, jarring realization that you can put your heavy reality down on the table and the other person isn't going to flinch, judge, or try to hastily sweep it away.
So the initial relief is really just the release of the cognitive load. You no longer have to carry the narrative alone. That makes total sense.
It's a huge weight lifted.
But taking that theory and applying it in the real world exposes a massive flaw in how we historically seek help. Because emotional readiness means absolutely nothing if the physical logistics kill your momentum.
The logistics are usually the final boss, so to speak.
Let's say you finally conquer the fear, you accept that the intake is gentle, and you are ready to talk. But then you realize the nearest clinic is an hour away in traffic, and you have to take a half day off work just to sit in a waiting room.
The geography alone is a massive wall for people.
It is the ultimate momentum killer. And this is where the structural design of coping and healing counseling becomes a critical case study in dismantling barriers to entry.
Right, because we are looking at a practice that serves the entire state of Georgia, all 159 counties.
Which is an incredibly diverse geographic footprint. I mean, you have the dense, high-traffic urban sprawl of Atlanta, and then you have these deeply remote rural communities where specialized healthcare of any kind is practically non-existent.
It's a huge spectrum.
If you tried to build a physical brick-and-mortar infrastructure to equitably serve all 159 of those counties, you would just fail. The math doesn't work.
You couldn't staff it.
Right. So CHC operates as a 100% telehealth, IPA-compliant practice via secure video. But let me play devil's advocate for a second here.
Go for it.
If the entire goal of therapy is deep, resonant human connection, the feeling of truly being seen and heard, doesn't staring at a grid on a laptop screen inherently kill the vibe? Aren't we losing something vital by not sitting on the traditional therapist's couch?
What's fascinating here is that the clinical data increasingly points to the exact opposite conclusion.
Wait, really? It's better?
In many cases, yes.
Mm.
Telehealth doesn't kill the connection. For many people, it actually accelerates emotional openness.
How does that work?
Think about the traditional model. You are driving to a strange building, sitting in a sterile waiting room with outdated magazines, and then sitting on a stranger's couch. Your nervous system is on high alert.
You're practically buzzing with anxiety.
Exactly. But with telehealth, you're in your own living room. You're wearing your own comfortable clothes. You might have your dog sitting next to you.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
The inherent safety of your own environment lowers your physiological defenses before the session even begins.
I never thought about it like that. The home field advantage of telehealth actually does some of the heavy lifting for the therapist. Your guard is already down.
It jumpstarts the whole process.
And beyond the comfort factor, stripping away the physical building means you aren't limited by who happens to be in driving distance. The CHC model utilizes a team of over 15 licensed therapists, offering a massive spectrum of specialties.
They covered a lot of ground: anxiety, depression, trauma, PTSD, grief, relationships, and general stress management.
And they offer this for individuals, couples, families, and teens ages 13 and up, alongside life coaching. But the thing that really caught my eye in their structural breakdown is the specific alphabet soup of licenses they employ.
Ah, yes. The acronyms.
Yeah, they highlight having LCSWs, LPCs, and LMFTs. For the layman listening right now, what is the actual mechanical difference between those roles and why should a patient care?
It's a crucial distinction because it represents the democratization of bespoke care. Let's break down those acronyms mechanically. An LPC is a licensed professional counselor.
Okay, so what's their focus?
You can think of them a bit like a software debugger. They are highly focused on the individual's internal cognitive behavioral patterns, looking at how your specific thoughts influence your emotions and actions.
Yeah. Okay, so an LPC is zeroed in on my internal circuitry. Got it. What about an LCSW?
An LCSW is a licensed clinical social worker. They are trained to look through a more systemic environmental lens.
Systemic meaning what exactly?
Think of them like an architect examining the structural foundation of a house. They aren't just looking at your internal thoughts. They're looking at how your community, your economic environment, your job, and your access to resources are impacting your mental health.
Oh, wow. So they are highly pragmatic problem solvers?
Exactly. They look at the big picture outside of your own head.
And the LMFT.
That's a licensed marriage and family therapist. They view human behavior relationally. If you imagine family as a complex mechanical watch, an LMFT doesn't just look at one broken gear.
They look at how all the gears turn against each other.
Yes, they are experts in the spaces between people communication breakdowns, intergenerational trauma, and systemic family dynamics.
So if we tie that back to the 159 counties, if you're operating a single physical office in a small rural town, you might have one isolated therapist who is forced to act as a generalist for everything.
And that's just not ideal for anyone.
But because CHC has this 15-plus provider telehealth network, they can actually match the mechanism of the therapist to the specific need of the client.
It's highly targeted care.
A 13-year-old teen navigating the intense social pressures of high school might need the individual cognitive focus of an LTC. But a couple in their 50s dealing with profound grief after a loss needs the relational expertise of an LMFT.
Precisely. You aren't just getting someone to listen. You're getting someone whose specific clinical lens is calibrated to your exact type of struggle.
It's like having a specialist for everything.
The telehealth model creates a massive specialized safety net that hovers over the entire state, completely independent of zip codes.
So we've bypassed the mythology of the terrifying first day. We've solved the geographic and logistical nightmare of commuting through specialized telehealth. We have the right experts.
But there is still one final hurdle.
There is a massive elephant in the room. The hurdle that makes people close our browser tab right at the finish line when their finger is hovering over the book appointment button.
The economics of care, the financial friction.
The financial friction, because there is a deeply ingrained societal narrative that therapy is a luxury.
Oh, absolutely.
It's framed as this boutique wellness experience reserved for people who have massive amounts of disposable income. But the financial parameters we're looking at with the CHC model actively dismantle that narrative.
And they do so with highly pragmatic numbers. You have to understand, financial stress and mental health issues are not separate silos.
They feed into each other.
They are a vicious self-feeding cycle. If you are seeking therapy for crushing anxiety, but the session itself costs $200 out of pocket, the financial blow essentially neutralizes the clinical benefit.
Because now you're just stressed about the money. Your brain stays in fight or flight mode.
Exactly. You can't heal if you're worried about making rent.
So what does this all mean for the actual cost? Let's look at how CHC disrupts this. First, they welcome Medicaid with a $0 copay.
Which is huge.
And for commercial insurance, they are in-network with the major heavyweights: Aetna, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, and Humana.
Getting in-network is what changes the game for the patient.
Right, because they have secured that in-network status, the typical copay for a session drops to somewhere between $10 and $40.
If we connect this back to the cognitive load we discussed earlier, reducing that financial friction is quite literally a clinical intervention in itself.
A $0 copay for Medicaid means that for the most economically vulnerable populations, the wire on that vicious cycle of poverty and mental health is completely cut. The barrier is gone.
It allows them to just focus on the work.
And even for the commercial insurance bracket, a $10 to $40 copay completely reframes the math of personal maintenance. If you're looking at your budget right now, a $40 copay means you're essentially trading one delivery meal for an hour of profound professional clarity.
That's a great way to look at it.
You're trading a couple of streaming subscriptions for the ability to untangle a mental knot you've been carrying for a decade. We routinely budget $40 to distract ourselves from our stress.
And this is budgeting $40 to actually resolve the stress.
It normalizes the process entirely. It takes therapy off the pedestal of being a boutique luxury and places it squarely in the realm of routine, accessible healthcare.
Just like you wouldn't hesitate to pay a small copay to get antibiotics for a physical infection, you shouldn't hesitate to address the warning lights on your emotional dashboard.
Exactly. The systems are in place to make it as frictionless as possible. For those listening who are realizing that the old excuses, the fear, the commute, the cost, don't actually hold water anymore, making the connection is the only step left.
That first outreach is so important.
And CHC has set this up so you can initiate that first gentle step in whatever way feels safest to you. You can call them directly at 404-832-0102.
Or you can do it online.
Right, you can go at your own pace online at chetherapy.com. Or, if picking up the phone still feels like too much of a barrier, you can simply send a quiet email to support@chetherapy.com to get the ball rolling.
Having multiple low-stakes avenues of contact is just one final way of ensuring that the geometry of seeking help fits the reality of the person reaching out. You aren't boxed into one method.
So let's take a step back and look at the complete picture of what we've unpacked in this deep dive today. We started with the universal anxiety of the unknown, that flashing check engine light that we all try to ignore.
And we found out it's not as scary as we think.
No, it's not. We've seen that the fear of the diagnostic process is almost entirely based on outdated mythology. Your first day of therapy isn't an interrogation under a spotlight. It is simply an orientation.
It is the realization that active, non-judgmental listening can instantly relieve the pressure of carrying your narrative alone. You don't have to carry it all.
And we've seen how modern structural frameworks like coping and healing counseling's 100% telehealth model bypass the physical world entirely.
By utilizing that diverse array of specialized experts.
Yes, from the architects of social work to the individual focus of professional counselors and the relational tuning of family therapists, they can deliver bespoke care to all 159 counties in Georgia, straight to the safety of your living room.
And they do it while actively dismantling the economic barriers.
Ensuring that $0 Medicaid, copays, and accessible commercial rates turn mental health from a luxury into a standard, accessible reality. The infrastructure is there, the experts are waiting, the cost is manageable.
The only variable in the equation is the willingness to pull the car into the bay.
Which leaves us with a final lingering thought for you to carry into the rest of your day. We've established that the profound initial relief of therapy often comes not from fixing the world, but simply from speaking your reality out loud to someone who is structurally trained to be a neutral mirror.
Just letting it out.
So, if that is true, what is the one heavy, exhausting thing you have been carrying in total silence that might instantly feel lighter if you just gave it a voice today?